Hey everyone. Thanks so much for being on with us today. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Amanda Leach. I'm the Assistant Director for Career and Networking Programs here at JMU. I'm a proud 2009 and 2015 grad of the university. Today's webinar is brought to you by the JMU Alumni Association. We have great representation from our alumni joining us today from all over the self-employed to employed by spectrum. I want to say thank you for participating, and your feedback means a lot to us. You will receive a follow-up survey after the webinar. Take time to give us some feedback so we can continue to improve what we're already doing. Before I introduce today's speaker, just some brief housekeeping notes. If you are participating live, know that your microphones are muted for the presenter, so don't worry about typing and making noise in the background. There are two chat options, a Q&A and a chat. If you have a specific question that needs to be addressed, please use the Q&A. If you just have some feedback for the presenter or myself, you can feel free to use the chat function. To tweet live during the webinar using the hashtag JMUAAWebinar. Our presenter has hashtags on the screen as well, so we'd love for you to use them. It will be recorded and can be accessed on our website under Career and Networking and then Webinars. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter today. Her name is Jennifer Eddy. She's a 2004 JMU SMAD major with a concentration in print journalism and a minor in sociology. Jennifer is an experienced growth marketing strategist, a consultant, and frequent management strategy and performance optimization speaker, specialized in growing and promoting IT, consulting, government, and healthcare markets. In 2011, she established Eddy Communications with her husband, Sean, to bring the best and brightest national talent together to provide growth strategy, marketing execution, and memorable results for high-growth firms. Jennifer, I'm so thankful for you being on the line today.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I'm excited to be here, and thank you guys for joining. It's exciting to be speaking to fellow alumni, and I'm really excited to hopefully interact with each of you today and to hear a little bit more about what in your journey brought this point to a webinar on things you should know before becoming an entrepreneur. Many times I thought about it before I took the leap, and certainly I did a lot more now that I do this every day. So I really appreciate everybody taking the time out, and we'll try and make this as interactive as possible. Amanda mentioned that there is a chat feature. Feel free to send questions in real time as we're talking through sites. It's a much more exciting experience for everybody if we can go through it together and answer questions and just target the information as much as possible. We've packed a lot into an hour, so if I start going too fast or you miss something, just let me know, and we'll regroup and get everybody moving along with us. So without further ado, I'd like to kind of talk you through a little bit of who I am. The first part is that I'm the founder of Eddy Communications. My husband and I started the firm just under 5 years ago. It'll be 5 years in July. And we are a growth strategy consulting firm specialized in helping businesses figure out what marketing strategies will get them to their next phase of development, maturity, etc. So this came out of a career of working in marketing strategy for a lot of international companies, IT companies primarily, although I spent the last few years before starting this company working with a number of global consulting firms in the same kind of role, helping them figure out if their growth goal was X by next year or 5 years from now, what did they need to do to get there? Did they need to launch new products? Did they need to change up their marketing strategy in terms of their messaging? Did they need to advertise in new places? That kind of thing. Measuring the benchmarks and the indicators of success to make sure they were getting the kind of gains and returns they needed. One of the things that drove me nuts in that capacity was working with a number of traditional agencies, sort of the old school Madison Avenue companies to develop advertising and marketing plans. And at the end of the day, they cared a lot about whether or not they won awards and sort of left us on the side hanging in terms of how do we demonstrate to our executive team that we're getting results. And I think what's happened over the years is that the traditional agency model has evolved in such a way that it came out of creative expertise and a lot of self-congratulatory award ceremonies, and there wasn't much you could measure 40 or 50 years ago in terms of marketing returns. All of that has changed, and I've been lucky enough to come up in my career post-JMU at a time where everything is measurable, and digital marketing has really changed the game in terms of what we expect and really how much control, influence, and potential marketing has with a seat at the table with the executive team. And so I really saw a different vision of how this industry should work and founded EddyCom with the goal of offering that to companies. And for years, we've been doing that. So that's been great. We've had the privilege, we're headquartered here in Roanoke, Virginia, but we've had the privilege of working with companies all over the globe, from Minneapolis to Hyderabad and just about everywhere in between, no matter which direction you go, east or west. So we've had a lot of fun along the journey, but there sure have been some hard times as well, and certainly some lessons learned. Every day as an entrepreneur is a learned, and we've also had the privilege and the honor of working with other entrepreneurs and business owners and executives as they try and navigate the challenges that they face. So we've kind of had a couple of different perspectives on these types of challenges. I hope in this conversation today I can use some of the lessons we learned in the goal of making sure that you have to learn the same ones, or at least don't take as long to learn some of these same lessons, and maybe pay it forward by teaching this crew of entrepreneurs what you've learned. So that is my goal. Please interrupt as you see fit. Feel free to chat with us in real time. Your chats won't show up on the screen. Everyone won't see them, but I will. And I can read them out loud where appropriate and respond as we're going through. So please don't hesitate to do that. Relevant. So let's kick this off with why we're all here. So I imagine most of you are kind of interested in entrepreneurship. Either a passion of yours, something you've always wanted to do, or you had a career change recently and it's something you're contemplating, or it's something you've already done and now you're sort of wondering if you're doing it in the best possible way. So with that in mind, there's never been a better time, right? In the last few years in particular, you've probably heard about this called the gig economy, right? It originally, the phrase was coined coming out of the Uber and Airbnb sort of model, where technology is letting people use resources they already have to create their own income stream in a way that traditionally wasn't accessible unless you had a company. So that barrier has been really largely removed, right? Where you could rent out your home, where you could catch a ride without calling a cab, and do it with some level of confidence in the establishment, in the infrastructure that was there, that you would be safe, that your home would be protected, you'd be insured, without having to set up a company of your own. So just in the last few years, since this quote-unquote gig economy has evolved, 45 million Americans have traded the traditional way of doing things to start working in these gig economies, whether serving the customer as a Uber or an Airbnb host, or whether they're buying the services of these types of companies. People are trusting this kind of system that didn't exist 10 years ago in a way that is really unprecedented. Part of the reason that people are doing that is fallout from the 2008 economic crisis. A lot of people changed careers and never really landed back on their feet where they thought to be, or where they were before the 2008 economic situation. But also there's been some shifting political realities. So the Affordable Care Act has changed what you need a formal corporate job. It used to be that's how you got your health care. Well, now there are other options. Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad. Regardless of how you feel about the politics of it, for the first time there are other options. Whereas if you were an entrepreneur, you probably just went without health care. You just went with insurance. You went without some of the benefits that you get through a traditional corporate career. And that really left a large percentage of the population out of the pool of potential entrepreneurs, either because they couldn't afford it, because they're at a life stage where it was too risky. They had young children, or they had a health issue of their own, that sort of thing. Because of all of this, there are abundant training resources available today that weren't available 5-10 years ago. So that's a great, if you're looking through the lens of entrepreneurship, you're always trying to conserve cash and earn as much knowledge, free learning as you can at any given moment. And there are more resources available today than there ever have been before. They're available on demand through the web. They're available in person through government resources. They're available through private enterprise and venture capital networks. They're really sort of coming at you from every angle if you start looking for them. State, local, and federal agencies have invested in support programs at unprecedented levels. So there are financial programs, these are training programs, these are networking communities. There's all kinds of support infrastructure that's available today that before. It's sort of up to the entrepreneur to figure out what's relevant, what's useful, and what's not. So the good news. It still isn't an easy path. If you look at the map here, you'll see certain places across the country where entrepreneurship is at sort of an all-time high. So these are the top 40 areas where the number of entrepreneurs per capita is exceedingly high. And in our area, you'll notice that sort of the DC, Northern Virginia region and the Tidewater region of Virginia are two of those spots. But really all up and down the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic corridor is pretty condensed. Of course, the places out in California near San Francisco, San Diego, Washington, Oregon, the places you would expect to see IT accelerators are keeping with their reputation. The Midwest around the area is pretty densely packed as well. Florida, Texas. So some of the metropolitan areas that you would expect high density of new entrepreneurship. And that's good, but that also creates tremendous competition. The truth of the matter is that in today's day and age, the myths and abbreviated truths about entrepreneurship abound. We love a rags to riches story in this country, and why not, right? It's what we're founded on. It's so much of our cultural fiber. However, more people increasing the number of companies available to do business with, doesn't matter the product or service you're selling, it doesn't change the fact that demand is what the demand is. And unless you're creating demand program through other methods, that doesn't change. And an increase in supply doesn't necessarily mean there's enough opportunity for everyone to succeed. So the density can be seen as a really good thing. It can be seen as a sociological indicator of where the country is. But it doesn't necessarily equate to the potential for success for all of these businesses. Right now, the current workforce, the self-employed current workforce, which includes the majority of small business owners, is at an all-time high. It's about 1/3 of the workforce in the U.S., according to some reports, which is tremendously high, highest numbers in modern history. However, that situation also sometimes blamed for low economic growth because of the amount of competition that there are. So it's a balancing act. There's a lot of competition right now for entrepreneurs, and the bottom line is that in this country, and really most of the countries around the world right now, consumerism is really dictating the values of most customers in most markets, and that means they're looking for value for less money, which makes it harder for the small companies who don't have economy of scale to rely on to distinguish themselves and thrive. And the basic truth is that in economy to work, both on a local, and national level and an international level, more people must work for someone else than branch out on your own. So as much as we love the entrepreneurship story, as much as the barriers to entry to entrepreneurship have come down, there's a lot of pain that it takes to be successful, and really there's not enough room in the market for one to be a successful entrepreneur. As much as that may sound nice and realistic, it just doesn't work. The laws of the economy don't work. The economic. But regardless, small business activity is on the rise. 49 of 50 states and 38 of the top 40 U.S. metro areas are all seeing a significant uptick in small business activity over the last 5 years, and that continues to trend upward into 2016. So now that I've picked a not so rosy picture, I want to kind of talk you through the lessons I had learned, having last 5 years, and there's lots of lessons, but these are sort of my 10 favorite, and they come from our own experience, my husband and I starting our firm, as well as many customers we've worked with in various consulting capacities over the years as well. So number one sounds a bit trite. I suppose it is. I used to groan when my parents would say this to me, but money doesn't, in fact, grow on trees, and that holds true whether you're talking to your teenager about the new pair of pants that they can buy and how expensive they are, or whether you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for funding to get your business started. Startup costs are lower than ever before, so this is good news, right? When 5 or 10 years ago, if you wanted to set up a sophisticated e-commerce site to sell something online, shoes, for example, or an eBay-like site, it could cost you millions of dollars just to build the infrastructure before you ever sold anything or really even advertised anything was for sale. Today, that same program can be deployed using open source software and some Google searches on how to for virtually nothing. I mean, just the time it would take to get it up and running. So barriers to entry keep down. It's easier to get in, and it's easier to try things than it ever was before. Small business loan programs continue to be well advertised. There are lots of different ways to get funding in terms of small loans, but the truth of the matter is it's fully available for everybody, and they're better advertised than they are truly available. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Startup funding through non-traditional resources like venture capital and angel investors is more easily available than ever before. There's more of it out there, and there's more people administering it, so that means there's more diversity in the types of businesses they're looking to support. And then the startup valuations are higher. So while this is good news, there's lots of new millionaires that are starting businesses and hitting it out of the park early on. The competition is still much fiercer than the narrative will lead you to believe. Venture capital and angel funding is exceedingly rare. It continues to be highly competitive, and it varies widely by industry. So it's still about 1 in 400 businesses that seek venture capital funding actually get it. Most of them don't get the level of funding that they're really asking for. Angel funding is a little bit more accessible. I think it's closer to 1 in 40 was the last number that I saw. But again, it's very different if you're trying to start a retail establishment or a services business than if you're trying to invent a new piece of software or create an infrastructure model that will then have lots of different potential new paths or revenue streams down the line. So depending on what you're trying to do, angel and venture capital funding sources could be really for you, but also depending on where you live, they may or may not be particularly accessible. Banks want to lend to companies who are already successful. So this is something that I didn't understand until I got into the business world directly myself. Banks, I knew that, and they don't want to take risks on people with bad credit scores and that kind of thing. But the old days where your business had a credit score and you personally had a credit score, those are gone. Your business is you, and you are your business, and that's just the reality of the situation we live in. And banks have limited resources for small business lending. They want to use their dollars to be affiliated with the most successful stories. So if you have been in business for several years, you're already turning a profit, and quite frankly don't really need the money, they're going to be more likely to want to lend to you than if you don't need the money. You're asking for it because you're trying to invest in something new. I just got a question about crowdfunding sources and Kickstarter, so that was a great great segue to my last bullet point. Alternative funding sources require significant time, attention, and resources. So there are some fabulous resources that are now available that never used to be, things like Kickstarter, where you can post your idea, you can ask the masses to participate and tell you whether it's a good idea by funding you in small amounts or trying to fund you if you can raise enough pledge from different types of folks. That's the typical model for crowdfunding. There are also microloan programs where you can put out your idea to a community of people that all have small amounts of money to fund a project and supporters and build a net based off of sort of your impression with the masses. So if you have a really creative idea, you have a really good idea, you have an idea for social change that needs some funding to get started, this can be a great way to get your idea out. This is still fairly new. It's probably about 5 years old, maybe 10 years old now as a concept, but it's proven itself very successful in certain circumstances. Warning here would be, it isn't easy as it once was. When these tools were first released, it was very easy to put it out and be one of a few ideas that lots of people were going to check out these sites for the first time and were reading through them and pledging small amounts because it was fun. Today, there are far more ideas out there than there are people pledging money. Two, doesn't mean the model doesn't work. It doesn't mean that you need a strategy if you're going to raise money through these types of and resources. And that strategy requires time, attention, resources, cash flow, some marketing materials in its own right. So it's not something you should do willy-nilly. You need to plan out when it goes up, what the message is, who you're targeting, and be very calculated the way you would with any marketing campaign. So great resources, but money is hard to raise. It's important you raise it, especially for certain industries, but it's so that you get it right and that you don't spend so much time raising money that you forget to run your business or start your business or ever get anything off the ground. Questions about that before we move on to number 2? Okay. Moving faster, my friends. Okay. Next painful reality. Not everyone is going to love your idea. This is something many of my colleagues and I bemoan all the time. You know, you come to entrepreneurship because you have this great idea and you're so excited about it and you just think it's going to change the world or, you know, change the life of your family or those that you support. And you have so much passion around it, and that passion is going to make you successful, but not everybody's going to get it, and that's painful. But it's really important to recognize early this has no independent value on its own. It's not good or bad. It just is. Not everyone's going to love your idea, and that's okay. It will also be really hard to get over your own bias, yours or somebody else's. If somebody doesn't like your idea, you may not be able to convince them to like your idea. You certainly can't bully them to liking your idea. And you like your idea more than you should. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the emotions about it are. Your passion is going to help you persevere over would-be competitors who may be talked out of joining the market. It's to persevere over challenges to cash flow or staffing issues or resource allocations, all the number of things that will happen as you start up a new business. And your unique idea or vision will help you differentiate. Your spin on something is what makes it different from somebody else starting that same company. And you will be uniquely responsible for the success or failure of that. And the painful truth is, if it's successful, there'll be lots of people to stand next to you and say, I was a part of that too. It will fall squarely on you. So that's just a reality of entrepreneur, and it's not that different from any other kind of leadership. It's also important to recognize that not all opinions are created equally. It doesn't really matter what your Uncle Bob thinks of your idea if they're not your target market and they have no expertise in the area you're trying to get into. So you can be nice and you can listen and you can pay attention to that and take it as a data point, but that more value or more attention than other sources of information. So maybe you're prioritizing the inputs you're getting, how much real value and significance they have to your business plan. So try and keep an objective perspective on it. And then honesty is worth more than flattery. One of the most painful realizations in entrepreneurship is that there are a lot of people that will get really excited about you taking the risk because they can live vicariously through you. And the truth of the matter is there's a lot of people that will tell you an idea is great because they don't want to hurt your feelings. Or they hate the idea because they've given it much thought and that's their first reaction. Either way, you need to be able to learn to suss through what feedback is valuable and what feedback isn't. And that it's okay if everybody doesn't like your idea. If you get caught up in the personalness of that, and every time you hear something that could be perceived as negative criticism, you'll spend a lot of cycles, wasting time and not moving your business forward. You're going to a lot. You have to sell yourself, your idea, your product, and half jokingly, but not totally, and possibly your prized possessions. Entrepreneurship is an all-in game. You will only succeed if you get everything and if you really go after what you're passionate about. But that requires believing in what you're selling. Selling is a dirty word. It's got a bad reputation for a number of reasons, because there are a lot of stereotypes about salesmen and realtors and infomercials, but wait, there's more heavy, hard sales. But the truth of the matter is, if you know your product and you are building your business, whether it's a services business, a social enterprise, or a product business, it doesn't really matter. If you're building it with a specific customer problem in mind, and you're building it to solve that customer's problem, then you have the best solution for that customer, and you will have something of value to share with them, and they're going to want to hear it. Building it and driving every decision about what you do, it will feel like a stretch. You'll feel like you're not telling the truth, or that you're not truing an objective perspective when someone asks for your opinion. If you feel that way, it's probably an indicator that something is off in your actions and the way that you're running things. But ultimately, selling in and of itself is providing value to a specific customer or potential customer who has a specific need that you can address. So there's nothing inherently bad about that. And gut says that it is. Evaluation about whether or not entrepreneurship is right for you. This has been an ongoing struggle for our family as we started our business, because we very much in what we're building, but we don't consider ourselves natural salespeople. We really had to work at understanding what our role in the sales cycle would be, could be, and how that fit into our market position and how we wanted to be seen as a company and as people, because it all reflects both ways. Selling can't be done well from a passive position. You can't wait for someone to come to you and say, sell me. It doesn't happen nearly as often as we'd like. It has to be proactive. You have to find people who have the need that you know how to solve, and you need to partner with them. And you need to make that valuable for you, but you also need to make it valuable for them. No one can do your product or service as well as you can, which means if you're not very good at it, you've set the bar pretty low for the future hopes and potential of your company and all future employees. So you absolutely have to learn to sell well if you don't do it naturally. There are proven techniques that can be learned. There's lots of free information on how to learn it. There's lots of paid classes and courses and things you can take. But ultimately, I personally believe it's rooted in, do you know who your customer is? Do you know what they need? Have something of value to offer them. If you can answer those questions with confidence, you're probably more than halfway there in most cases. And that I really wish I had addressed early on, but if you sell yourself short today, it will be harder to sell yourself at full value tomorrow, and you'll continue to have an uphill battle as your company grows instead of benefit from the return of having a good reputation behind you. You'll constantly be trying to sell the value of what you do at full cost, and that's going to be an ongoing struggle. So whether you're selling your idea, your company, yourself, or the value of the product that you're selling, ultimately you need to know what you're worth. So get research early, do it often, make sure that you're confident so that when someone tries to negotiate with you, you know what you're worth and you're not going to undersell or underserve them by offering a subpar arrangement. And that before I keep going. Okay. This will underestimate the power of collaboration. So this is one where I am guilty. I have made this mistake over and over and over again, and I think it's because my background was working for very big companies, and I founded our company. I wanted to level the playing field. I want to make medium-sized companies able to compete with large companies, and small companies have a chance to compete on a medium playing field and really provide a path to success that makes it possible for lots of different companies to compete with each other in a way that historically they haven't been able to. So there's a lot of idealism wrapped up in that, but that was something I was really passionate about. Mixed in with that was the perception that I need everything like the big company. A big company, we're mid-sized at best. And so ultimately, I had to learn painfully over and over again from a number of different directions that friendships are much more valuable than trade secrets. When you're Apple, you have to protect what that iPhone is going to look like. It's going to dramatically affect how you get to market, how much it's worth. When you're a small business, no product is really attention of their marketplace, and you need to be able to learn to swim with the fish, no pun intended. So ask for advice, barter when you can, partner, cooperate, find ways to be bigger than you are by yourself. And I'll give you some great examples. We took a class that was offered federally through the SBA, but it was offered locally here in Roanoke. And we took this class, and there were a lot of other business owners in it, a bagel company and a number of retail establishments and some law firms. And it was all about how do you scale your business from mid-size to larger. And honestly, I signed up because my husband got a phone call and he didn't shut it as quickly as I would have. But we showed up the first day, and I was really cynical. The company that was selling, that delivering the service for the SBA as a federal contractor, we weren't direct competitors in our federal consulting space. I was unsure about sharing the challenges we were having as a business with other business owners in the community that I didn't really know. But ultimately, over the course of like 16 weeks, we went through this course and to other business owners, and the amount of value that we got out of the relationships we built was completely immeasurable. Even to the point where we were looking to hire a full-time administrative assistant. We really didn't need full-time. We probably needed part-time for the role that we had in mind. But the right kind of candidates locally, the professional skills, we felt like it had to be a full-time position. Talking to other business owners, we identified another business that had the same need. We ended up sharing a resource, which opened up a whole new pool of candidates and potential for both of our businesses. It was a great short-term solution that got both where we needed to be without overextending resources we didn't have to spare. It was hugely beneficial. It was something I never would have imagined doing, especially with another company that was in such a vastly different line of work, but it worked out. Since then, we've developed strategic partnerships with freelancers, with 1099s, with other companies who are looking to supplement their income. There are a number of different ways to look and be bigger than you are at any given moment, but it requires thinking outside the box. And so I challenge each of you to think of yourself as a company, an individual company that has to stand on its own, but also to think about yourself as part of a larger network. Large companies' biggest are their failure to innovate, and the advantage of being a small business is being able to turn on a dime. So this is really, really valuable if you can get and work quickly to respond to whatever the need of the moment is. Really smart way. Okay, the next one was mental, physical, and financial feast or famine. I think when we started, lots of people warned us about the financial feast or famine. They said, when you go into business for yourself, aren't you scared that you're not going to have a regular paycheck? Or what happens when you have to pay everybody else first and there's nothing left for you? And absolutely, that was a concern every day. So we decided a nest egg, and we saved for it. We leveraged some strategic position that we had with the firm that I was working with prior to our company. So there were a number of different things we did to establish a small but a nest egg when we first started. But enough, you have to keep replenishing it. When the money does come in, you have to go back and go into yourself and make sure that nest egg stays intact. But we really thought about feast or famine from a financial perspective. There's also a mental and a physical aspect to feast and famine. There are going to be moments where is ringing off the hook and you can't keep up, and you're turning when you're thinking, terrible, terrible situation. I've worked so hard for these leads and now I can't respond to them. There's going to be moments where you've done everything right and the phone still doesn't ring. you're prepared to respond to those situations. My first bit of advice is design your team to be scalable. Think about 1099s, which are independent contractors. For those of you who don't know that term, it's an IRS term. Use hourly employees. I'm very hung up initially on if we were going to take on an employee, it had to be full benefits. And I realized later that I kind of came from a cushy corporate background, and that's what I expected, and that's what I thought everyone had. But there are plenty of people who are very happy to have a part-time job or to receive their schedule weekly or biweekly, to be called in on demand if they're getting to do the kind of work that they're passionate about. You can develop incentive programs to help the people helping you succeed and to give them a way to grow the amount of work share that's available to them. So think through all of that with that sometimes there's going to be lots of work and sometimes there's not, and that's okay. That's part of the growing process. Then pull a transparent view into the company health and business cycles. When you're a small business, one of the best things you can do is share the transparency of who you are and what you're trying to build, and tap into the passion of those who are willing to help you do it. But that requires you to open up the kimono a little bit, to talk to people about where the business is at any given moment and drive results in a very specific way. When times are tough, innovate. It doesn't mean you shut it down. It means you look for opportunities to do your business in a way that you hadn't planned for in the past. So your first reaction should not be, this isn't working, although it probably will be. It is for most people. It's human. But when it gets tough, that's an opportunity to differentiate your firm, to differentiate the way you do things, to look for opportunities to do things differently and to innovate and to outperform the competition. Then make use of the quiet times. They're part of the process. They're the scariest times as an entrepreneur because you don't know if potential clients are just on vacation or if they're ever coming back. But ultimately, those times are needed to put systems and processes in place to run to the busy times in more efficient ways. So before them, use them, kind of embrace them as best you can. Okay, number 6, evaluate, prioritize, and leverage your resources. There are lots and lots and lots of resources that are available, more than ever before. These are some of the ones that you can typically find in tangible ways. There are incubation centers, business incubation centers, co-working spaces, innovation labs, with development agencies and centers. The Small Business Administration website has a number of resources. There's local SBDCs, which are Small Business Development Centers. They're run by U.S. Small Business Administration, and they're just about every city in the country. They're free. They're staffed with business professionals with entrepreneurial experience whose purpose is to help you for free at your entrepreneurial dreams. So set up meetings, call them, ask for help. I mentioned the SBA Scale-Up program, which is a program that we went through. That's currently in its pilot phase, but it's starting to expand out. That's for businesses who have had some amount of success to date and show potential for growth, looking for something bigger and broader than what's accomplished thus far. So they're helping them kind of after the startup phase into the scaling, growing business phase. There's the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. There are local chambers of commerce in almost every city in the nation. Professional associations. There's mentor groups like SCORE and Focus, where retired business professionals help other entrepreneurs get their businesses underway. And then local universities also have entrepreneurship programs, development centers, resources available to help you succeed. Not all of these are created equal, and there's no blanket formula, that the BDC is better than the Chamber of Commerce, or the resources here are better than there. You're going to have to evaluate the market that you're in and check out all of these resources, talk to other business owners, and figure out where the pockets of gold in the community are, and then spend your time in the places that are most valuable to you. Okay, pick your battles. Time is a limited resource. The more you spend on one issue, the less time you have for the next. It sounds obvious, but you be careful about what things you're about. Your attention and your time are so valuable and so important to the success of your business. And then, to steal a chapter from the Lean Startup and the agile development methodologies, fail early and often. Don't be afraid to adjust course, but validate your learnings along the way. If you're adjusting course, you don't know why, and you make the mistake again, you haven't really learned anything. You haven't gained value. But if you're always doing an A/B test and you're deciding that this way is better than that way because of X, Y, and Z, you continue to grow your business over time. A friend of mine heard I was giving this talk, and she said, "Oh, you have to tell them that up in your rearview mirror may never actually get in your way." It's very helpful to have lots of different tools and to be able to look at your business from a number of different perspectives. But ultimately, you can be blindsided by something in front of you, coming up from your left or your right. It's rarely something behind you that you think is going to be the problem ends up being the problem. So make sure you keep your eyes on the road ahead, focus on whatever the challenge of the moment is, and respond as best you can, and then move on. There are issues that need attention. Entrepreneur, your best skill is your ability to flex and respond in time to threats as they emerge. Did this again, so hang in here with me and feel free to ask questions if I'm running of interest to you. And identify problems before searching for solutions. This is a huge challenge for entrepreneurs. There'll never be more people trying to sell you something than after you open a business. And I'm a mom, and I've been given a lot of unsolicited mothering advice. And when you get pregnant, people always give you a lot of advice. It's more so when you become an entrepreneur. When people think you have money, they think you have lots of time on your hands to vet every potential opportunity. You've got staff, you're hiring, and we're coming at you from every direction. If it's a problem you've encountered, you probably don't need to address it yet. And today, in today's business world, in today's IT world, solution for everything, all kinds of problems you didn't know you had: customer relationship management, project management, social media management, cash flow tracking, benefits management, stock photo sources, WordPress plugins, new accounting tools. Ultimately, none of it matters if you don't have a problem. So figure out what your business situation is, track that all the time, look for the tool that's going to meet the specific problem you have today, give thought to how you're going to grow and how that problem is going to evolve in the coming months, but just in things that are long-term potential problems. Your cash flow is one of the most critical things to keeping you in business over the coming months. If you pre-invest in problems you don't have, that's money tied up in not being able to address tomorrow's situation that you didn't know was coming. No one knows everything, including you. So ask for help. Accept entrepreneurship will keep you on your toes. If it doesn't, it's probably not the right path for you, or you're not doing it well enough. The joy of entrepreneurship is knowing that no day is going to be like the next. And so developing systems and tools and resources and ways to respond to that is part of the fun. It's definitely what sets apart the successful businesses from those that aren't. Okay, number define and refine systems. Do it early, do it often. And this is one I am totally guilty of not following. No one run your business like you unless you teach them how, and that's a scary thing to do. If it's your idea and brainchild and it's your passion, you don't necessarily want to give it away to somebody who's not as invested as you. And let's be honest, no one's ever going to be as invested in you in your business as you are. It was but small businesses will struggle to scale. They always have, they always will. And a big part of the reason is that the founders don't want to let go of some of the reins. And in order to succeed, in order to grow, a company has to be more than the sum of its parts. Your greatest asset and your greatest liability will both be you. If you are tremendous at what you do, your company will flourish. If you get sick tomorrow, your company will get sick too. You need to figure out how to build a structure that allows your business to succeed without you. It's a scary thing to do, but it's really important. The sooner you do it, the more valuable your company will become early on, and it will maintain that value over time. Only half joking, what are you waiting for? Why are you listening to me? Do it yesterday. It all needs to be done. The most important way, I think, to think about this, if you look at a franchise model, it's probably the most expensive way to read a how-to guide that possibly exists. But the reason it works, the reason people are willing to pay millions of dollars for a franchise of an existing business is because there's a roadmap. There's something to follow. It's very easy. It's step-by-step guides to success. And ultimately, you can still screw it up. But you can write down what makes your business successful, what makes it tick, how it works if you're not there, your business going regardless of what happens to you, and you allow other people to invest in the company in a way that makes them want the long haul. So it's really, really important that you define and refine systems. The biggest fragile nature of small businesses is that the brainchild, the why it works, is that in one person's brain. Finally, create your own motivation. So entrepreneurship, like any kind of leadership, can be lonely. You have to be your own cheerleader. So mentors, form a group of trusted advisors. They're not always the same people. You need people that cheer you up when you're down. And then you also need people that will tell you how it is based on their experience and their expertise, regardless of how you feel about it. Then that I'm slightly embarrassed to share, but I will share. So early in my career, I started saving the emails that people had sent me that said nice things about my skill set. So great email to your boss, really well written, very professional. Event the other day, so glad it worked out, or I can tell you're really working on this skill set or that skill set that we looked at in your last review. I mean, very early on, it was very tactical, very simple little things, but emails made me smile and feel like my efforts were being recognized. I'm saving them. And that day, or there's a difficult moment, transition, or challenge in my career that I didn't feel like I was up for, I would open up that email file and just kind of go through and reread those emails and think, okay, in each of those, there was a situation where I thought I couldn't overcome it, and I did. And it was sort of the secret little thing that I did for years until one day I finally opened up and I told one of my mentors about it. And he was a partner of a multinational corporation and had been successful by every measure and metric. And when I told him, he laughed at me and he goes, "Do you really think you're the only one that does that? I've been doing that for longer than you've been alive." And it totally opened my eyes, and I looked around. I started talking about it with other people, and it turned out that every person I admired that I worked with in my professional career did something very similar. They either kept a success file, or they had some way of channeling the positive emotions that come with a success back to their workday when they were having a difficult moment. They became their own cheerleaders. And as much as we'd all love it if the JMU cheer squad showed up at your office and ran through with flags every time you went well, Andre is lonely, and most of your successes will come in the middle of the night when no one's paying attention, and most of your failures will happen in a very public way in daylight, and that just is the way that it is. So you need to learn to make your own motivation, and that's that is emotional about entrepreneurship. So a lot of my advice has been, take it out. It does affect your bottom line, but there's a piece of emotion that's going to drive your motivation and keep you committed when tough, and learning how to channel that can become really, really valuable. And archive your business story as it unfolds. Just like you want to build and track your career, you want to build and track your business's career so that story becomes more valuable over time. You'll never have time to go back and build case studies from 3 years ago, or to capture a client quote from that project you did last year. If you don't capture it in real time, it won't get captured. And as business grows, the stories process easier, and they'll help you have the motivation to take the risks when you need to take risks. So they become really, really valuable to you if you can learn how to harness the power of that. Okay, so I promised you 10, but I'll throw in a few other resources that might be valuable to you. There are a couple of articles and tools that I found helpful. Some of them are referenced as stats in this presentation, but I will, I'm sure Amanda sent out the deck to everybody who's on the call today. So you can look at these, click on the links in your own time, and then hopefully email me and let me know what was useful or what sparked your imagination, because I'm curious. Here's a short list of websites I wish I knew about sooner. Some of these are fantastic. A lot of them are lists, either articles or tools or resources by topic or challenge that an entrepreneur might have. So just a tremendous amount of data in these links. So check them out when you've got time. Other tips that didn't make my top 10 but are really critically important. Find ways to multitask. The way it is listen to audiobooks and podcasts. I love to read, but I don't anymore. And so most of my books, podcasts, and my business advice and my learning come from my back and forth to work or during my kids in the car and putting something on the radio. So take advantage of times where you can be doing more than one thing at once. Work from strategy, that means smarter, not harder. There's only so many hours in the day. It's the world of limited resources. So make sure that everything you're doing is working towards a goal, which also goes back to A/B testing. Everything you do, you have a choice, so make sure you're measuring those choices and comparing results, even if it's not a formal process. Learn and grow from experiences that you embrace, and that requires a level of mindfulness and pay attention to what decisions you're making and why. Document and learn from your mistakes when you can. Don't follow the latest trend, which means to be different, you have to act different. So innovate to meet your own needs, your own business's needs, not the ones that business owners are saying are their problem. Pride or fear stand in your way. Listen to your gut, no more than you can quantify. It's really important that you listen to your gut. There's a psychology behind why this works, but a marketer, I tell you, people make decisions for reasons that don't make a lot of sense. But your gut won't be wrong. Listen to it when it speaks strongly to you. Advocates and supporters across every channel. You never know when you'll need them or when they might need you. And then give back as you can. Partly when people will give back to you, partly because it just makes the world a better place, and partly we're JMU grads and we hold the door open for the next generation. It's just what we do. So if all of that still have you feeling like you can take on the world and you're ready to start a company, you're probably in place for entrepreneurship. If you're a little freaked out, it's okay. There's no rush. There's no pressure. We need more people who work for other people than people who work for themselves. But the important thing is that you go into whatever decision you make with your eyes wide open. If there's anything I can do to help, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll stay on for as long as you need me to if people have questions, and then all of my contact info is here if you want to out directly, and we can have one-on-one conversations as well. But I really hope that a number of you take on the challenge to become entrepreneurs. It can be incredibly rewarding. It's been a great journey for us and for our family, and for our broader company family. It's been really fun to see all the entrepreneurs and employees and all the success had helping us grow our business. So it can be really, really rewarding, but it's not something you should do lightly. You kind of have to go in knowing what you want out of the experience. Any further ado, I'd love to take questions.
Jen, I have a question come in from Jack Donovan, and his question was, going back to the crowdfunding avenue, how much detail do you have to share about your idea, and doesn't such sharing carry with it the possibility that someone will take your idea and beat you to market?
Jack, yes, it does. This is one of the risks of crowd sharing and crowdfunding. You're putting your idea out there. If you're looking for innovation, if you're looking for partners, if you're looking for quote-unquote market research about whether or not your value proposition has resonated with a large audience, crowdfunding can be tremendously valuable even if you never raise a dollar, because you're putting a message out there and you're seeing how people respond. But the risk is that someone else can take your idea and beat you to market. That is always the risk. There are ways to go to market. You can try and be the best. You can try and be the fastest. You can try and be the cheapest. They're all sort of marketing strategies for positioning within a marketplace. There's inherent risk in letting people know what you're going to do before you do it. Honestly, in a small market, the same risk happens if you go to a bank, in a venture capitalist. They go, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I'm not going to fund this joker. He has no background, but I'm going to go find my favorite software developer that I worked with 2 years ago and tell him I'm going to give him the money if he goes and does this. So those risks are inherently there. There's some things you can do to protect yourself in terms of legal contracts, non-disclosure agreements, non-compete agreements, things like that in advance. But at the end of the day, every time you share an idea, the use of that idea is at risk. Intellectual property is one of the most difficult things to protect. So as you craft what messages you put out, you should be thinking about that risk and balancing how much you put out, how much you're asking for back, and keep that in balance. That doesn't mean it's not still worth the risk. If you have no other way of getting it done, make it happen. It's not going to happen without you putting the idea out there. Sometimes you can also find a co-partner or a co-founder who wants to do something similar through crowdfunding sites. There are also some of the links to the websites I wish I knew about had some links to within founder dating sites. Dating is in quotes, you're not really dating, but I'm looking for a partner to start my business. I have this idea and this set. I'm looking for somebody who has this skill set and a similar idea. That can be a great way to go if you're trying to get to market quickly without letting too much out of the bag too early. And I found there's tremendous value in crowdfunding sites as a way to test an idea. So before you even figure out how much you really need, go put out a value proposition to your target market. Say, I'm trying to do this to solve this problem. And if that problem even resonates with the people you're trying to about it, it's a good way to test a message. And if people fund it as well, that's great. What I've found is because of the noise in the crowdfunding market right now, just the amount of traffic there is, unless you've got some pretty snap marketing materials going in, some videos, some well thought out marketing plans, that kind of thing, you're not probably going to get a ton of funding, but you can get a ton of market research for free, which might be just as valuable or more. And I have had some clients that have had some tremendous success early and often, but it's hard to know how much of that comes back from how big their network was or how many people they were sending to the crowdfunding site from other sources versus people who were organically already on those sites. Does that make sense?
That's a phenomenal answer, above and beyond. Jen, I have one question for you that actually I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on. You mentioned don't be afraid to fail and then kind of adjust course. When did you acknowledge that it's time to throw in the towel? I mean, is there a certain point that you say this isn't working and it's time to completely adjust, or it's time to kind of go back to the drawing board?
Yeah, it's funny, that question. I know it's not a plant, but it feels very much like a plant. We got the same question from one of our clients the other day, and so I'm laughing because it's unfamiliar. And but all of that said, the part of looking at what the scheme of questions you need to get answers to are up front and kind of listing them out so that every roadblock and you have to change direction, you know whether you really hit a roadblock or you've just learned something that now means you need to learn something else. So everything is a progression. If you hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock after roadblock and you run out of questions, you've learned probably not a good place to be. If you ask one or two questions or you try one or two things in a market and they don't work, the answer is probably that you haven't tried the right thing yet. For instance, we have not currently a client, a company that has tried to go into a specific market. They're in, they develop land desserts and wanted to go after the cater market because they knew that these desserts are typically sold in parties, and most people in most parts of the country don't have high-end parties every day, a couple times a year max, and that's the extent of the number of orders they can get out of the customer base they currently have, which is a consumer base. So they went after the catering market. They took out some ads in national trade publications, and those ads basically didn't produce much. And as they did some digging, they found out that the reason was most of the caterers who read those magazines, while seeing the ads, typically buy through some national distributors that don't carry their product line. Okay, well, obviously, caterers are not for us. Responded, no, actually, that means that magazine, that venue wasn't the right magazine to advertise in, and maybe advertising wasn't the right way to go with your marketing dollars. What you learned is there's a large portion of the market that use these national distributors, and you don't want those caterers because barrier to entry is too high. But there are a number of caterers that don't use those, and now you can go after just those caterers, ones that use local foods, organic foods, only want to work in vendors that have a homegrown story, those types of things. And I said, so what we need is a different marketing strategy, not a different market. They were ready to abandon them because their first advertising attempt didn't produce results. They started in that particular example with expensive investment, full-page ads in a national publication. There are a number of things they could have done in that probably would have been more to them. So, and both in terms of producing results, but also in terms of giving them information from which they could make their investments moving forward. With small businesses, it's really important that you're always protecting that cash flow. Don't spend $1,000 if you can spend $500 to find out if something's going to work first. The economies of scale and savings does justify a big expense at a risk.
Jen, and we have one last question come in, and we can answer this one pretty quickly from Will. He said, this would have definitely freaked me out a couple of years ago. Now it's just realistic. How did you move through that? How did you move through, whoa, this is scary and a little bit overwhelming, to, oh, I can do this?
It's a great question, and thank you for the credit of thinking that we've totally moved through it. We face that every day. For us, it was a decision. I'm working remotely from a home office while I attended grad school, and I got put on a career track with an international firm that I was in, and it was sort of my career dream. It happened at the exact moment that we were expecting our first child, and in an area where the quality of life was just exceptional. And it kind of was a perfect storm of work-life decisions that had to be made. And ultimately, we decided we get 1 year. If we could make it 1 year, then I could go work somewhere else without the issue of a non-compete standing in my way. And that gave us enough courage to step off the plank. And that was 4 or 5 years ago. And now I truly couldn't imagine going back to that traditional role that I always thought was my dream job, because I was every day just really excited to go to work and to see what that day is going to hold. But I am not a traditional entrepreneur in that I didn't know this is what I wanted to do. I'm fairly risk adverse. So I think, like any big project, you chunk it up. And if it's what you do, and you say, here's the first step. If I can do this, then I'll decide. And I think we kind of every day that way. And spans have gotten longer. So that first year is, we have to make it a year, enough savings to cover us a month or two. So we have to come up with 9 or 10 more months worth of living in order to make it to me being able to go out and compete on a full and open market to get a regular real job again. And that's kind of how we look at it. Today we got it as, okay, in the next 12 months we want to accomplish this. If you direction X, if we don't, we'll go down direction Y. Backup plans have become less formal as we've started to be able to look at the history of our company and rely on patterns and things that happen. But early on, you don't have those patterns, you don't have those histories, you don't know what the seasonality of your business is going to be. So you really do need to have just sort of your own for risk in mind and come up with this is what I need, this is when I'll make a decision, so that every day's ups and downs don't shake your confidence, because it's really easy to get scared off and something that could work tomorrow if you have enough care and feeding along the way.
Thank you so much. I have to say I've seen a lot of great comments coming in saying thank you. This has been inspirational. I'll say this has been such a tangible presentation. I think so many of the tips that you've given during this presentation are things that can really help people start their own businesses. And if you're on today and you are going to go start your own business, let us know. We'd love to hear that feedback. So on behalf of the JMU Alumni Association, I want to thank you, Jen, for your time and your presentation today. It's really been fabulous. Everyone who's on the line, who's stuck with us, we hope you'll join us for our next webinar, How to Separate Emotion from Fact to Grow a Business That Thrives, with 1989 JMU alumna Maura Fredericks. That's Thursday, April 14th at noon. If you or someone you know is interested in presenting, please contact me at leachad@jmu.edu. Thank you again, Jen. It's just really been wonderful. I can't say it enough. I really appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks for hanging on. Please let me know what you decide to do. I love to hear about our JMU alum making things happen.